So in an attempt to bring in a new player base for their game, Ubisoft went ahead and made For Honor free for the week. Kind of. It's the starter edition for the game, which is something that Ubisoft has been doing a lot lately with their games, most notably in Rainbow Six Siege. You can buy the starter edition for like 10 or 15 bucks, which gets you the whole game, and the fact that you can use all the mechanics and you get all the maps, which includes some of the DLC in fact, which is kind of cool because it doesn't limit the player base to who owns and doesn't own the DLC. But if you want the full game with all the characters, then you need to pony up an extra $40 or $50 to get the advanced edition, or just buy the season passes as they roll out. You can also put in an extreme amount of effort to unlock the characters with in-game credits, but honestly, the amount of time it takes is just ridiculous. So the question here being, is the free game really worth your time? And my honest answer is, it kinda depends. If you're looking for a solid single-player hack and slash with a great story, well-fleshed-out characters, turn away right now. Delete the game, stop. This is not what that is. It looks really good and controls well, but the campaign itself is just agony. You would think leading an army of knights into battle to siege a castle would be stupid fun, like Dynasty Warriors, but more realistic combat. But it just ends up being tedious. Half the enemies die in one hit and pose no real threat to you, and the stronger lieutenants who use the game's kind of interesting combat style to duel with are few and far between. But beyond that, all the missions are just so boring. You're not on battlefields, just these small scripted paths bouncing between objectives, and after like 6 hours it just sort of ends. It's like being stuck in traffic. The stronger enemies are like these red lights that kind of stop you from completing the objectives, but even after you kill them, it's just a slog through these mindless enemies that you kind of individually attack one by one. It's just not fun. There is a story, but I couldn't tell it to you, and I just beat the game like 5 hours ago. There's this evil bitch going around trying to kill people and take over kingdoms, and you start fighting for her because I don't know. There's just no motivations there other than to kill, and you just have to follow her orders blindly for the first 3 hours. It's just aggravating. I get there are some people that just want to watch the world burn, and she kind of represents that, but the fact that we're just helping her blindly is confusing. You don't have an option, and halfway through the game I started to realize I'm just killing all these good guys for absolutely no reason. It's just, I mean, I'd stay away from it even if you like the game's multiplayer, which is actually kind of good. And it kind of makes sense because multiplayer is the main focus of this game. It's what it was sold on, so it's the most weighted in my opinion of whether or not you should actually try the game. So if you're a big fan of these team-based pseudo-fighting games with objective-based game modes, well, actually, I think this is like the only one. But if that sounds cool, then yeah, I mean, try it out. The most interesting part about the game is obviously the combat system, which you've probably seen in videos or read about, or I don't know, maybe seen on the logo of the fucking game. Basically, you attack and block based on 3 different stances and have to read your enemy's attacks and defenses to know when and where to strike. It's a pretty interesting system that goes above the traditional fighting game style of blocks and combos, and after taking some time to get used to it, I found myself really liking the combat. In 1v1 duels, that is. It was frustrating at first because playing with a mouse means the slightest twitch of your wrist will change your stance to leave you open for an attack, and I have a pretty huge mouse pad, and I found myself running out of room just dragging the mouse up to ensure I stayed in the stance to block somebody. When you start out, it just kind of feels like who can swing their sword faster, but if you calm down and try to get in the other guy's head, it's pretty fun reading their moves and countering them appropriately. Blocking 4 shots off of some guy just spamming the light attack only to shield break him and toss in a combo before parrying him with a heavy and then finishing him off was actually really satisfying. It's tactical, it's fun, and allows you to really punish the people who are just mashing buttons. Here's the thing though. The games I was playing were 4v4. The 1v1 duels are fun, they're quick and exciting, but the 4v4 game modes rely on your teammates to back you up and lock up the other fighters. Instead, they all die pretty much instantly, and your one-on-one duel becomes into a 1v3 slaughter where you have to block enough attacks to build up your rage meter or just die. I mean, if your chances of winning a 1v1 are 50%, a 1v2 is around 10. It's just kind of funny that a game called For Honor has people literally stabbing you in the back in the middle of a duel. It takes the tactical and nuanced, thought-out combat and turns it into a game of who has the most aware teammates. So starting this game off by getting matched up with a bunch of random low levels is a sure way to get you off to a bad start. Maybe consider getting a friend who you can communicate with in 2v2 duels instead. The thing is, I know there's a lot more complexity to the fighting hidden in here somewhere, but I just can't see myself putting in the hours to learn it all. And that's not just to learn the combat systems and the movesets for each character. Like I said, if you don't pay for the season pass or the extreme editions, then most of the characters are going to be hidden behind a pretty huge wall of time. You can unlock unlock them with in-game credits, but honestly, I don't think it's worth it for the amount of work you'd have to put in. It's not really pay to win, although there are loot boxes which you can buy with microtransactions, but it just feels weird not being able to play all the characters in a game even though you own it. I get that's their way to kind of keep up developer support by having these season passes and stuff. I just think there would have been a better way to go about it if you were actually trying to keep this player base that's pretty massively bumped up their numbers on Steam, honestly. So if you really want to play this game, it's not a question of if you can spare the time to try it out. It's a question of if you can spare the time to grind out all the experience you need to get the characters that you want. My suggestion would be to try it out. I mean, if this sounds interesting to you at all, it's definitely worth putting a few hours into just to see if you like it. Put an hour or two into the multiplayer to see if it's good for you, and I genuinely do think a lot of people will enjoy this game. If you do, put in some more time to see how long it takes to unlock those characters, and maybe even consider putting out the cash to upgrade to the season pass or the better version of the game. For me, I think I'm gonna leave this one alone. Even though I got it for free, I just can't see myself putting in the amount of hours it would take to get to a competitive level that I want to be at. And with the real world work and all the other games I have on my backlog to play, I don't know if I can spare the time to get really good at this. If you want to try it, then you gotta do it quick. The game goes back to its normal price on Monday, and then the player count should taper off not long after that. If you do try it, let me know what you think. Send me an invite and I'll play a game with you. But if you do love the game, then come tell me why in the comments. I'm kind of curious to hear from the fan base on this, and I can imagine that a few of you might be a little upset hearing what I've said about it.